Arcade Heroes.
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and it's time to catch up with the latest arcade releases. I haven't really been posting arcade news videos because there hasn't been much news to talk about. As you can see on the front page of ArcadeHeroes.com, I mean, not even all the entries are from April. Like, these are from March right here. So it's been that slow, but it's pretty normal for there to be a slowdown in arcade news after a major trade show event happens, because all the news happens at the trade show and then it's just kind of a dearth for a while. Although, generally speaking, there can be some releases that pop up in the wake of that, and that's what's happened here. Now, why is it that I'm not doing, say, like the May arcade releases? Like, within the console space, you pretty much always know what's going to be launching to the industry, excepting some surprises that drop out of nowhere every now and then, like the IGS arcade collection that happened recently. But within the arcade business, it's kind of rare for arcade manufacturers to actually announce in advance when they're going to start shipping something. A lot of the times, just because it's a lot more difficult to be manufacturing these big cabinets, to know precisely when they're going to be ready to start shipping out. It's just the one other issue is that even when they do start to ship out, it's rare that they will say anything or distributors will say anything. And so they may talk about pre-orders, but they won't say shipping now until sometimes I have to ask, where I'm just thinking about it. It's like, hey, I haven't heard anything from this company in a while. Let me check and see if there's anything that's shipping now. And then they'll say whether there is or not. And so because of that, have to essentially wait for the month to play out to see what actually launched. The first game we'll discuss is the Motion Deluxe version of NFS Heat Takedown, aka Need for Speed Heat Takedown. And so this has been heavily modified from the console version. It wouldn't be the same game, really. Just kind of a similar veneer and everything, using a lot of the same assets and whatnot, but changed to work for the needs of the arcade market. And as I've mentioned many times before, you can't really just take a console game, drop it into an arcade cabinet, and call it a day if you want it to be a successful piece. And so you have to change it enough to fit with the needs of being in an environment like this. And so I have plenty of footage of both the standard and the deluxe version. In fact, I'll get into a video there in a moment, but as you can see from the cabinet, as far as I know, it's shipping in this, what we like to call twin configuration, where it essentially ships with two, and then something like the Marquee makes them one, like Outrun 2, the standard version shipped in a twin model. Sega used to do a lot of twin models back in the day. But I just haven't been able to confirm that for certain from Adrenaline. It's just the Marquee, if you look at it, it does not look like something that's set up to be on just one unit. And of course, with an arcade racer, you don't want to buy just one unless something about the game just doesn't work for multiplayer, like the old Batman. Didn't really work in that regard for multiplayer. But of course, the major difference on this model of the game would be the motion base. There, it also has a 75-inch 4K screen. Let me jump ahead to where there might actually be motion. There we go. And like I mentioned in the text, the motion felt pretty nicely integrated, or felt natural enough. It didn't feel completely out of whack. It was good, smooth motion as well, from what I recall. The deluxe version also comes with a 7.1 channel surround sound system, whereas the standard version is a 5.1. Although, that said, I don't know if it's because of the seat or maybe it's just my brain. It seemed to me like the sound was a little crisper on the standard version. Now, when I was at Amusement Expo and played this, I didn't go and immediately play the SD version, so I could be totally wrong about that. And yes, the cars do disappear instead of sticking around. Not sure why they did that, and so I guess they don't do that on the console version. I'm not sure. And since I still haven't played it, I probably should at some point. But yeah, this is out now, and for those curious on the price, if you're an arcade operator, it's around $21,000 per seat. And so with a pair of them, plus shipping and tax, it might be close to $50,000, but that still puts it under, say, the Fast and Furious arcade, which is what it really seems like Adrenaline is aiming to compete with here. And so, but they also, of course, have the standard version as well, which I've already talked about before. And so yes, it is a pricey game. Anything with motion is going to be pricier than your typical ones, and post the giant inflation increases we've seen in the past couple of years, I mean, had this been released in 2019, probably would have been closer to the $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 range. I'm not 100% sure, no way of really knowing, but everything's gone up by a few $1,000s. But that's available now, and you might find it out there. So if you are a gamer, one reason why I also talk about price, yeah, it's for the other arcade operators who might so happen to come across this and haven't already gotten a quote from their manufacturer, or from the distributor, sorry. But if you've ever gone to a place like Dave & Buster's or Round One USA and you see a price and you do the conversion for the credits to cash, and you're like, wow, this is like $3 a credit, or $4 or $5, or maybe $2, $1 if you're lucky. Oftentimes the higher priced items, it's because the games themselves cost so much that they want to try and get them to pay themselves off within a reasonable amount of time. And a lot of consumers have shown that they're willing to pay higher prices. Like I hear all the time that people complain about 25 cents, but at places like Dave & Buster's and Round One, a lot of people are willing to spend that much per game as well. And there was a recent debate on a Facebook page about that where family entertainment center operators were conversing about price, and the guy started the conversation by saying we should be charging more, and some others responded saying, well, I would rather people get more bang for their buck. Others are like, yeah, I should be charging more. So there's a debate about it. Anyways, the next game that came out, and this the trailers for this launched in the middle of April, and I just kind of missed it until yesterday, or until the weekend. But this is from a company called Pinball Adventures, and I think they've been teasing some designs for a few years now, maybe a couple of years, such as Punny Factory Pinball, Elements Pinball, Volts Electrical, Sushi Madness, Forsaken Ninja. I'm not really sure if these are pinball machines or not, but they finally have begun to ship this Punny Factory pinball machine, and there's this trailer here. And yeah, years in the making, as many pinball machines tend to be, but this would be what you could call an indie pinball machine. Oftentimes we like to say boutique. I guess it sounds fancier. And the theme behind this one is you're in a factory that makes puns. And so I'd assume that the machine has a lot of puns that it says during play. But there's also apparently artwork inside of the cabinet. Like if you were to remove the glass and pull up the play field and look at the guts inside, and most of the time it's just wood or painted wood, but this one actually has artwork inside. And so if you check the page here, the official page mentions that their back glass is printed on acrylic using reverse screen printing, which is not very common to see in pinball machines anymore. High-end wood cabinets, unique wood playfields, made from their very own very Canadian maple. Okay, not sure what makes it very Canadian versus regular Canadian, but I think this might be the first Canadian manufacturer of pinball machines. I could be wrong. I don't know a ton about early pinball history between like the 30s and the 80s, really. So maybe there have been some, but at least in modern times, I've not heard of anybody from Canada that has been getting into the pinball manufacturing game. And so, yeah. And they have hydro-dipped toys, also known as water transfer printing, which I've heard of before, to apply printed designs to three-dimensional surfaces. Kind of looks like tie-dye. to me. Or maybe it's a fancier way of saying tie-dye. And they've designed their own computer stuff in-house using the newest edition of Raspberry Pi. So it's a Raspberry Pi-powered pinball machine, I assume with extra I/O stuff. And all that. So the overall goal is to press 50 of the 250 puns with your progress shown by a circle of inserts above the flippers. This process is great fun for that first-time pinballer and a real challenge for the experienced player. And then powder coating and a play-filled railing system. And here's where you can see the artwork inside of the cabinet, which again is unusual. But I guess that what's interesting about that is it prevents the need for doing what are called side blades, the artwork that can be put on the sides, where a lot of times companies like Stern or Jersey Jack will offer that as a part of their top-of-the-line model, like the limited edition. But otherwise, if you want that stuff, it's an extra cost to purchase. But it looks like if they just take care of printing on the inside altogether, then it eliminates the need for that. And this is interesting. I saw this earlier. It has an optional smoke machine, and so a tube from the smoke machine would expel the smoke. That must be a typo. Through a 3D chimney on the top of the machine whenever a punny is being pressed. This killer option is a unique feature that can elevate your customer's user experience and fun factor, which I would agree on. It's been rare where I've seen smoke used in an arcade, or I've never seen it on a pinball machine. There was a Brazilian company a few years ago that had their own virtual bowling game, a dinosaur one. I have a video on it called I Bowl Dinos, and that had a smoke machine that had since it was a dinosaur themed game, it had a volcano on top, and you could spout water smoke through the top, and that was the only time I'd seen that. But as mentioned, where this is indie or boutique, very, very limited. The engraved editions have already sold out, so if you wanted one of the 12, too bad, I guess. And as of the other day, it had said at least 30 total units had already sold. 12 of those included the engraved editions, and so extremely limited edition game. And if you go to the shop, you can find it here. So $7,000 for the engraved version. The standard version is $6,500, and they're taking deposits for that. So don't know if I'll ever see this one out there. This isn't the type of company that would go to the big trade shows and whatnot, to be like Spooky Pinball, where they're just focused on pinball events and things like that. And I don't know what places generally grab these as far as commercial locations go. I know a lot of collectors would grab them. But they also released this trailer for Elements Pinball, where they actually have a couple of trailers on their channel, where it's this is about the earth elements, and you can become a warrior, and or one of 3 warriors, or become all 3 maybe, and fight the elements or use elemental magical powers. It's an interesting concept. I always do appreciate companies that come out with original designs. It's just, at least in what I've seen from operating pinball machines, it doesn't always translate to better earnings. I did have Legends of Valhalla from American Pinball at my closed Ogden location for a little bit, and it did fine. It did just as well as any of the big name ones, but yeah, you defeat the elements and restore peace to the planet there. So don't know when that'll be shipping, probably after Punny Factory is done. But yeah, that's it for the pinball stuff. I guess I should mention before I move on from that, I asked Raw Thrills about Pulp Fiction Pinball, or Play Mechanics. Raw Thrills owns Play Mechanics, the company, and Play Mechanics is the company making Pulp Fiction, and they're currently saying third quarter 2023 for when that'll actually start shipping. So I had made a mistake. I think I had said that it might have already begun shipping previously, and or at least when I was at Amusement Expo, I thought that it might have, but that's not the case yet. So it's still a little ways out. Now, last but not least is Triotech's QUBE. Now, I also had video of this at IAPA 2022, and comes in a big cabinet, has a 4K 100-inch image on there, and it's a multi-game light gun system or arcade cabinet where you can pick one of the 3 games, and they said that they will have more games, or sometimes they call them rides, interactive rides, that you can play, or up to 4 people can play. And so this one that I'd filmed had this kind of Godzilla-like one called Gigamon. Now, as mentioned in the video there, the graphics are superb. The games all use Unreal or are developed in Unreal Engine 5, and on a 4K screen running at, I think, 60 frames per second constantly, never any slowdown. Looks fantastic. And so for anybody that likes to complain about the quality of arcade graphics out there, well, there you go. And I moved the camera away. I should have kept it there for a second, but there was a little bonus thing to shoot, so don't know if anybody shot that, but had to show the seats. Now the seats that are used are D-Box motion seats. Triotech has worked with D-Box for a long time, but what might stand out most about this game amongst other arcade games that are on the market is this would be the most expensive arcade game that is available on today's market. Now, as I talk about in the post here, it's not necessarily the most expensive arcade game ever released. That might be the Sega R360 if you consider that an arcade game, or the Ridge Racer Full Scale, or Sega Derby Owners Club, or Galaxian 3 Theater 6, and I guess it just depends on how you define arcade machine, but yeah, looking at inflation and whatnot, all of those should have cost more than this does. But for anybody wondering why exactly this would cost so much, so Triotech is not a name that I bring up a lot, and that's because they don't do a ton of arcade machines. I mean, they have done some in the past, like Ballistics, Wasteland Racer 2071. Their most popular, what you could call an arcade device out there, has been the Typhoon motion ride, and of course that wasn't interactive, and so I guess that's also another place where it's like, is this an arcade game or is it just more of a simulator? That Triotech has been mainly focused on creating these dark rides and these interactive theaters, like the XD Theater or the XD Dark Ride, and they have several others that they do. And those systems like the XD Dark Ride, years ago, back when I was selling arcade machines, I recall that the XD Dark Ride started at, it was either $250 or might have been $350,000. Now, post-inflation increases, it might even be higher than that. I haven't heard a quote on one recently, but for the QUBE, pause that there, as I mentioned here, it's in the neighborhood of, or I guess it might have been further up, around $100,000. And so again, for a small operator like myself, it's not who it's for. This isn't for bar arcades, it isn't for small arcades, it isn't even really for Chuck E. Cheese's. It's more for big family entertainment centers. Like, there's a lot out there that aren't Dave & Buster's or Round One USA, but they're trying to do their own thing. I mean, every state seems to have a small chain of family entertainment centers. Like here, I have one right down the hall where they have like 5 or 6 locations, and there's another one here in Utah called Boondocks. And places like that do have a budget, but maybe don't have the budget for something like the XD Dark Ride, which not only costs quite a bit more than this, but it's much bigger and it can get up to 40 seats in size. And so maybe everybody doesn't have the space for that, but they do have enough for something like this. And so that's who this is for. And of course, if one of those places get it, then you as a gamer can enjoy it. I'm not sure how much they would charge per play. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like $5 a play. But this is essentially a miniaturized XD Dark Ride, and that's why its cost is much higher than your typical arcade machine that's out there right now. And so yeah, that is now shipping, and so you might find it out there soon, and it'll also be releasing other games for it. Obviously that depends on how well it sells, but comes with 3 or they start with 3 and then goes from there as far as how much they can have. I think the XD Dark Ride has at least 10 different interactive rides on it, maybe more than that, and so I guess they just have to adapt it. And again, if this is a success for what they're looking for, then I would assume that they'll be able to easily convert those over and add more of them to the mix. But yeah, that covers the releases for April. I do need to update our new releases page, but if you're ever curious about what games have come out to the arcade industry, because yes, as this video shows, there are new arcade games coming out all the time. Had some people arguing with me about this recently, who are on the arcades are dead bandwagon, which is always odd when you still have all these new games coming out every single year for a dead industry. I don't see new stuff launching for Blockbuster Video out there. Although I guess there was a rumor that Blockbuster might be making a comeback or something, or trying to, but probably just streaming. But yeah, there's quite a few games that are coming soon, and so still waiting to hear on Donut Dodo Do that has been available for pre-order for a few weeks now. And I also did place an order for Enter the Gungeon House of the Gundead, which last I heard, it sounded like it might be within this beginning half of May, but as soon as I do get that, I'll film me unboxing it and setting it up, and maybe see if I can do some direct captures from that as well. And at some point I also need to get a direct capture of the new ocean level on Minecraft Dungeons Arcade. But yeah, that gets you up to date on the latest releases for arcade games. If there's something else you want me to cover or interested in seeing, let me know and I'll get it taken care of. But thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.